The federal government has been advised to adopt options within the Debt Management Office Act to refinance 23.7 trillion of Nigeria's total debt financed through ways and means instead of securitizing it. The Chief Executive Officer, the CFG Advisory, Tilewa Adebajo, who gave this advice, proposed a resolution trust special purpose vehicle backed by legislation within the current DMO Act and framework for refinancing of the nation's burgeoning debt as against securitizing the ways and means debt financing on the CBN balance sheet. Joining us on this show to discuss Nigeria's debt profile and ways to refinance the nation's debt as against securitizing the ways and means is Tilewa Adebajo, the Chief Executive Officer, the CFG Advisory. Welcome to the morning show.
Good morning, Ruben. Good morning, Ayo, and good morning, Rufai.
Good morning, sir.
Well, I'm tempted to ask you, are you still on this matter? And the reason I ask is that before the election, you wrote to the National Assembly.
Yes.
You offered advice. You were in the public domain, protesting about how there has been a violation of Section 38 of the CBN Act.
Yes.
And then now you've come out with another statement in which you are asking that, look, we have to clean up the balance sheet of the CBN. We have to do an audit of all those financial interventions by the CBN and all that. The question is anybody listening? Because you've been saying this now for months. Are the lawmakers listening? Who is listening?
Well, you are listening. So
yes, of course. You can't take that for granted.
It's a start. And I think also the legislators too are listening. The presidency sent a request to securitize the 23.7 billion to the Senate. And I want to thank a lot of the senators, especially a lady senator who stood up vehemently to oppose this. And of course, the Senate had to stand it down. That was last year. So the Senate is listening. So because that request has been stood down by the Senate. So I think we're making progress in that regard. The only issue we have is that after the Senate stood down that request, the House now approved 1 trillion in ways and means financing to finance the deficit, the budget deficit for some of the budget deficit for this year. So the question I've asked and I've posed to them is that how can the presidency request that the House approve an illegality? Because the 1 trillion is an illegality and they should not have passed or approved that. And the president does not even have the powers to go and request that approval. Because the CBN Act states clearly what your limit is. The limit, based on our revenue profiles now for ways and means financing, is only 1 trillion naira. Right now, that financing source is at 23.7 trillion. It is a crisis that we must address. And so that is where we are. So when the House goes back into session after the elections, then I think we'll continue the dialogue. But it is something that I've been talking about for 3 years now. And, but we must not, because the quantum, let me give you the quantum of this amount of money. The outstanding total public debts for Nigeria domestic debts for Nigeria as of September 2022 is 21 trillion. The ways and means financing is 23.7 trillion. So that has been amassed in the last 7 years. So it's completely unacceptable because we cannot finance it. 90% of our revenues are going towards debt servicing. So it's not sustainable. Something has to be done.
All right. Now, in terms of something being done, what you've proposed or what you're proposing is a resolution trust SPV backed by legislation. I'd like you to speak a bit more to that. So you've given an alternative to the securitization of ways and means. So please share.
Well, yeah, I think the legislators, to their credit, is that, okay, the government has to continue. We can't shut down government. We need to pay the civil servants. We need to continue to fund government activities because government is a continuum. So where are we going to get money to do all these things? So if you say that this securitization is illegal, what are we going to do? So you cannot just be talking about these things. What solutions are you offering? And I said, okay, fine. Let's talk to the DMO and the Ministry of Finance, who has sole responsibility for this. The CBN also is culpable because it's the balance sheet that's being used for this. So let's sit down and understand that even if you pass new legislation now, Dr. Abati, you are an expert in law. Because you pass a new legislation doesn't mean that what you committed under the old law is not illegal. The new law will be what is for going forward. So let us look at various alternatives if securitization is there. So again, I've sent them the proposal that, okay, let's look at this as an alternative. But I can't work on this alone. I'm not the agency. DMO has to be involved, Ministry of Finance has to be involved, and the central bank has to be involved. So I've just provided some alternative for the legislators to consider and just to bring this out to debate so that people can look at it and come back. And we've been getting a lot of feedback. I spoke to the lawyer who writes for the This Day Law magazine, Ikepo Braithwaite. So she also looked at it and gave a position and published it in This Day about the illegality of the Ways and Means financing. So there are legal positions also that have been published. Yeah, so I've been consulting widely on this, and so this is just to say, okay, this resolution trust company is like, well, since the problem is that 21 billion is a lot of money. Okay, the DMO this year, they have an auction on the 20th of March. They are able to raise just about 360 billion every month. So in a year, at best, they will do 4.5 trillion naira. That's the capacity that they have right now. Debts are maturing. The ones that are being matured are being refinanced. So every year. So the program for this year, maybe they will raise at best 5 trillion in the market. But we have 21 trillion to refinance. So the capital markets does not have capacity to absorb these funds. So that is where the problem is. Pension funds is 15 trillion. Out of the 15 trillion pension funds, 65% of that amount, or 9.5 trillion, is already invested in government securities. All the total deposits in the bank in Nigeria, 50 trillion. 32.5, which is the CRR, of 15 trillion, is already been isolated, and which is being used to fund these Ways and Means. This is putting pressure on the banks, because you are taking away from the banks.
So, and all of this is happening vis-a-vis, because when you talked about government securities, I'm like, really? Because they're as good as junk as we speak now with the higher interest rates.
Well, government securities, we need to also understand that they are not. Maybe our international bonds, yes, the yield on those ones are like very high because our credit rating on the Eurobonds has gone down. So in the international bond market, they're there. That's the pricing. But in the local domestic bond market, the Nigerian bonds are still the prime investment instrument. It's risk-free and is still the most desirous instrument in Nigeria.
But we are saying, look at the rate vis-a-vis the fact that now we still have to trickle up interest rates because we are fighting many things on many fronts. We are fighting inflation on one front. The CBN is still increasing interest rate. Probably they will still increase more at this point in time.
That's for the markets. Yeah, the government, as you can see from the last chart that came, the highest government borrowing is done at 16%, and that's for the 20-year bond. The 2 to 3 month treasury, you are looking at about between 10 to 16%. So depending on the instrument, government is still borrowing at the most cheap rates in the economy.
And another thing I'd like to ask you, while all of this is going on, if you said the DMO can only do about 4.5 trillion, let us know more about this new plan. Can you in detail about this new plan? What will it do? What will it generate? How will it refinance? What will be the structure of this plan? Because we are bleeding as we speak.
So what we are saying is that let us first of all understand what the size of the debt is. Is it 23.7 trillion? Is it 30 trillion? Once we get a size of the debt, then what we are trying to do is to say, let us isolate this debt into a special purpose vehicle. And then we've looked at 3 financial models.
Will the size be plus the interest that they say is accruing?
Yeah, I mean, the interest is accruing, but we don't know if the government is paying it because the central bank.
So how are we going to even get to know that?
So that's why when you isolate that debt into a special purpose vehicle, so we take the 27 trillion, let's say it's 27 trillion, we put it into an SPV. So that SPV holds that debt, and then over a period of maybe 5 to 7 years, you start to release it into the market.
How is that different from the securitization?
It's not a security. You issue the bonds.
Okay.
Okay, so that's what you do. Because since you are holding it, you know that you don't securitize it. So if you're in an SPV, the SPV is very clear, and it must have a specific sunset clause, so that you know that in 8 or 9 or 10 years' time, you are going to completely wind down.
But with the securitization, there was a sunset clause too.
Yes, they are looking at, but we didn't really see the details. They just said they want to securitize over 40 years. So, but this, you need to have a proposed vehicle with legal backing and legislation to say, okay, this is this debt, we know this is here, we're going to release X amount every year. And then you can put some enhancements into that instrument, which will make it more attractive to investors and release it into the market over a period of time.
I see Mr. Link in your proposals. And that's where, because you've used the word here, illegal.
Yes.
You know, more than twice.
Yes.
And in what you are proposing, you are saying that the DMO Act, the Fiscal Responsibility Act, and the CBN Act, that they all have circuit breakers.
Yes.
But that, you know, it's like we have willfully decided to just break the law. And we need to strengthen the law, which is what anybody will agree with. But at the same time, you are asking for audit. You're asking for review. You're asking for, okay, when you say the laws of Nigeria have been broken, what should be the consequences?
Thank you very much.
You didn't go as far as saying whoever has broken the law should be sanctioned. Are there provisions for sanctions? You just left that part of it hanging. Was that for political correctness purposes?
No, not really. Because when I spoke to Ikekwa Braithwaite about the legal consequences, I asked her that question. So now, it is the Central Bank of Nigeria that has violated that act. So that is now something for the presidency and the central bank to resolve. Okay, because so nobody has brought that up. And, you know, so that mechanism, you know, I've looked at it from a legal perspective, and I've asked Ikekwa Braithwaite to say, okay, what will happen? And they say, is there a recourse? Because is there something in the act that says that? But if you are a corporation and you break an act, or there's clearly violation, as you've said, of the law, who does that? So I don't have, you know, because now when you point that out, that is broken the law, then people are now asking you, bring your solution and let the relevant authorities go and deal with the people who violated the CBN Act.
All right, so as part of your proposal, you talked about the role that the CBN would play to make it work. And, you know, at the end, you've talked about it with effective monetary policies for a sustainable economy. I'd like you to evaluate the monetary policy of the CBN and how they can better strengthen economic activities in Nigeria, because this is a key factor if your proposal would work.
Yes, you've hit a very good point. As far as I see, the central bank has overreached itself a bit now. And with the current fiscal crisis that we're in, I think it's important that the central bank tries to take itself out of this whole problem, because the central bank has contributed to the fiscal crisis by violating the CBN Act and letting this 21.7 trillion get to this amount. So I think what the CBN needs to do is that they have all these intervention loans. So I say that audit these loans and push them out to Bank of Industry, Bank of Agriculture, and Development Bank of Nigeria. Take them off your balance sheet and give it to this development finance institution. They are set up to monitor loans and to administer loans. That's their function. So leave that alone and then focus on the monetary policy. You know, inflation is going out of control. We have challenges with foreign exchange management. And so central bank really needs to come up with serious policies that will, you know, and banking supervision. So let them go back to those core functions and to be able to generate policies that will create economic growth and let government go and resolve its fiscal issues.
Just very quickly as a follow, do you have proposals, especially in there? Because earlier today, during African Business Report, we're talking about the scarcity of dollars or foreign exchange and the impact. Joby just looked at the education aspect of it, but there are far-reaching impact for business owners, entrepreneurs. Are there proposals you have, or you'd rather abstain?
No, I think let's leave the FX management, because that one is also another big topic. You know, but basically what we are just saying is that merge the exchange rates and have a single window. I think we've been talking about that for 8 years. It hasn't happened. If they do that, then we can begin to see better things. That's why I'm saying that let them leave all these things and let them focus on these sort of issues.
So let me go back to this, your plan, because it's still very nebulous to me, and I've not still seen how different it is from securitization. In securitization, what the DMO was saying is we'll issue this over 40 years, people can take up these bonds and all of that.
But we are securitizing. There's a difference between securitization and refinancing. So let's get it. The plan we're talking about here is a refinancing, not a securitization.
Okay.
So if you look at the header, it clearly says that how we're going to refinance, not securitize. They're two different
So who are the people, you said they should put in sweeteners in there. Who are the people that are going to take up these bonds when you know the antecedents of what the market is even saying when the federal government issue out those bonds?
The federal government bonds, please let's get it wrong here. The federal government of Nigeria bonds is a first-class instrument and is a top-rated instrument in Nigeria. And I will continue to this day to recommend it to any investor. That is the number one risk-free financing investments in Nigeria today, and that will continue to be the case. So we just need to know how to use it, because that is the number one investor favorites. 65% of the pension funds, 9.5 trillion naira of the 15 million treasury bonds are invested in federal government bonds and other government instruments. It's a first-class instrument, and we're doing a good job with that, and we need to continue to use those instruments to begin to deepen the market.
So how will this work? Because obviously we still need some more money. So will the DMO continue with its 4.5 trillion threshold that they can probably raise while this special purpose vehicle goes on?
Yes, it will, because what it happens is the fact that, don't forget, there are many bonds outstanding. Every year, certain bonds will mature. This year, bonds that they issued maybe 4 years ago with a 5-year tenor might probably be maturing this year. They will refinance those bonds.
So when the bonds from this SPV mature,
yes.
What if we don't have the money then to be able to offset it?
We don't need the money because we're pushing it out into the markets. It's just the capacity of the market to absorb those funds. So these are just conceptual issues. So the legal framework needs to be worked out and all that. It's just a concept. And we just said, okay, this is a way, instead of securitizing, which will break the law, let us refinance, which will be within the law.
Look at the political dimension of this.
Yes.
In layman's language, this government is leaving very heavy debt for the next government that is coming in. Is there any hope that some of these proposals can be addressed within the remaining short lifespan of this administration? Because the ideas are one thing, putting them on the table before May 29 and making progress with them is another thing. Do you have any hope that anybody will push the needle positively? Then secondly, the Minister of Finance was on Voice of Nigeria yesterday, and she was appealing, she was saying that, look, by May 29, the Buhari administration will remove fuel subsidy to save about 10 to 15 trillion naira or thereabouts or whatever. She put a figure to it. Okay, is it a proper thing to do for the Buhari administration on the day it is handing over and leaving to just remove fuel subsidy and create bigger burden for an incoming administration? These are the political sides of this larger crisis.
Well, it's a political economy, and unfortunately, we've politicized the issue of this fuel subsidy. 5-6 years ago, I was proposing remove 10%, 15% every year. If we had done that over the last 8 years, this problem would have been over. So now all of a sudden we want a big bang approach. And these guys, because they have seen it, because subsidy is consuming between 10 to $15 billion a year. So all the oil proceeds we're getting, we are being told by NNPC, I don't know who verified that, all that money from our oil proceeds are going towards subsidy payments. Now, we need to verify this. Now, but it's not verifiable, but they are not putting any money. But there's a silver lining here, because the FIRS has actually stepped up. And in all this, Nigeria's economy has been diversified because non-oil revenues account for now more significant amount of our economy. And hopefully this year, we should be able to see close to 10 trillion from the FIRS. So we've made some positive steps. If we remove the subsidy, then you now have the breathing space. It's now a question of how you manage the cost push effect on inflation and all the other prices, which is where the central bank needs to go and focus its attention. Because if you remove subsidy, you now need to manage monetary policy, you need to tighten liquidity to ensure that the inflationary impact is minimized.
Right, yeah, I was going to touch on that, especially because you've talked about the significance or perhaps importance of revenue generation, particularly in light of our debt profile. You talked about fuel subsidy and you talk about other policies for an enabling environment for us to generate revenue. Very sad and unfortunate what's happening with regards to us not being able to tap from the windfall of the Russian-Ukraine war, which you identify. And, we talked about that earlier on. It's quite unfortunate. Is there a window for us? I mean, the war is still on. Is there a window for us to still be able to... I ask because, is there hope? Maybe I should just put, is there hope at all?
There is always hope.
Because OPEC has said that we have, they have confirmed that 1.3, we have raised our production, even though we're still falling short of the 1.8 MPD we can, that's expected of us. But is there any hope at all?
There is hope. NNLG, for instance, has brought 100 billion naira into Nigeria for the last $100 billion, 20 years. The government is making close to $1 billion in dividends, not to talk about taxes from this business. We ought to have 2 other LNG projects, but we've not made the investments. If you do not make the investments, you cannot expect the returns, which is where our challenge is. And that's why our oil production is dropping. So there is hope. If we remove the subsidy, this whole problem with the debt will be resolved immediately, because you now have cash flows of $15 billion every year and you stop budget deficit financing. So if you remove the subsidy, you will make a lot of progress. So you just have to manage the process. But subsidy removal is key. So there is hope.
Floating electricity.
Well, thank you very much, Tilewa Adebajo, Chief Executive Officer of CFG Advisory.